What's up, guys, and welcome back to episode 29 of the podcast. This is the Mobility Experiment, and I am Robbie Cassidy. I'm your host today. So today we're going to talk about breathing and stress, and how breathing relates to stress, and how you're actually able to work on your breathing, or if you become more aware of your breathing, how that can help you to reduce the stress response. And if we can reduce the stress response, we can get into a recovery state faster. Okay, because obviously stress is not something you want long term, but it is excellent short term, and it's how the body adapts short term. But chronic stress and chronic stressors, and depending on your response to a stressor, can be detrimental to your health in the long term. So in this podcast, I'm just going to go through a couple of things. What is stress, how breathing relates to stress, how we can change or reduce the stress response, and then hopefully give you a couple of takeaways or a couple of practical tips of different breathing exercises you can use to reduce the stress response. Now, really quickly, before I jump into the podcast, I want to talk about the foundational mobility program I have out at the moment. So it's a 6-week mobility program. It focuses on the back, hips and shoulders, and it just brings you through mobility exercises, strength exercises, and breathing exercises to help free up all these areas, free up the joints, and get you moving properly again. So it's a foundational mobility program. The reason it was called that is like an entry level into mobility. So it's really for people who have an idea of what it is, what mobility is, and different exercises to do, but don't know how to join them together, don't know what to do, or how to mix them in with each other, don't know if they should be doing just mobility on a day, just strength, or how you would actually mix breathing in. So it gives you a better idea of how to mix them all in while reducing pain and freeing up your hips, your back and your shoulders. And it's a scale program, so once you hit the 6-week mark, you can move then from the beginner to advanced, and you can go for another 6 weeks after that. So you can make it a 12-week program altogether. Now, jumping into the podcast, I wanted to talk, before I get into it specifically, I want to talk about what is stress. And in this podcast, what do I mean when I'm talking about stress? So stress is going to be, the way we're going to talk about it is we're going to look at the nervous system specifically. And I've talked about this in podcasts before. So your nervous system has this sympathetic mode and parasympathetic mode. And these are just two variations on its alertness or excitability. And basically your sympathetic, even though it doesn't sound like it, your sympathetic is your fight or flight. Your parasympathetic then is your rest and digest mode. Okay, so it's, instead of thinking that you're in one or the other all the time, it's easier to think of it as a tone, and that you can upregulate your sympathetic and downregulate to a parasympathetic, or even easier again, I want you to think of it as a dial. So dial going from 1 to 10. If it's at 10, that means you are anxiety attacks, max amount of stress, or you're after seeing a lion in the wild, so you really need that fight or flight response. If you turn it down to 1, let's just say that you're sleeping. Okay, so 1 is basically asleep, and you're just completely relaxed. And it's a simple way to think about it, but it does help it'll help you to break down what you're supposed to do and what you're trying to do when you're trying to reduce stress. Because as we said at the start, stress is excellent for the body. It's exactly what it needs for adaptation, but chronic stress and long-term stress is going to have its effect, because you're always in a fight or flight and you never get into that rest and digest. So the body will just start to break down. So you can't always be going 100%. You need to take that time off so you're able to go 100% the next time again. Okay? And usually when you do take that time off, you come back stronger. So that's why it's so important, and that's how the body works throughout your whole life. Now, as I was saying, we're going to talk about that sympathetic state, parasympathetic state, and we're going to think about what we're doing with breathing is we're trying to turn the dial down. So let's say if you're at an 8 usually, or let's say a 7 usually, we want to try turn it down so you can get in below a 5, okay? And if you can get in below a 5, then the body will prioritize recovery more, and it will prioritize relaxation more. And when you are like that, you'll be rejuvenated, it'll reduce fatigue, you'll sleep way better, and you'll feel way better. Your mood will be your mood will be improved, and reduce depressive symptoms or any issues that may have. You'll have a clearer head. But if you're highly strung and highly stressed all the time, your head will be confused, you will be angry all the time, your mood can be all over the place, you could have mood swings, and just in general you won't feel great. Okay, so it's really important that we do take that time to relax after we go or let's say after, an easy example would be like a gym session. If you're gymming and you're trying to go 6-7 days a week and you're trying to do that consistently over 5-6 weeks, you will get an injury because the body will break down. It won't be able to withstand that. So it's really important to plan recovery days and plan active recovery days. And I'll talk about that in a couple of podcasts that are coming up, and I've talked about that before. But to give the body time to adapt. So when we talk about the stress response and we talk about what contributes to them, you have to look at everything. So when you look at like right in front of you in the moment now, what's contributing to stress, when you think about it back, if we were in the wild or just an animal itself, if a zebra is going through the wild, it comes across a line, it's going to go into a fight or flight state, and it either gets away, and when it gets away, it can relax down again. It's not always thinking about that line, it can relax down again. If it doesn't get away, well, that's going to be the end of the zebra. So that's going to be one thing. So in the moment, stress is going to be a huge one. And it can be, you can transfer that to anything that you're doing. So stress could be something like you're late for work, and you're stuck in traffic, and that gets extremely stressful. You get into work and you're trying to hide from your boss so they didn't notice that you were late. It could be that you have a presentation or an interview and you're trying to prepare for it and trying to do as good as you can or do the best you can. So you're putting a bit more pressure on yourself, and that pressure is coming through as stress. Then that's real psychological stress. It could be that you are, as I said earlier on, going to the gym, or you're going for a run. That's more of a physiological stress. And all those things are going to play in. Now, as we were saying, no problem doing it in short term. Long term, not a great idea. Now, other things that contribute to your stress, and what we're going to go into a small bit more detail in this podcast, is breathing. Now, the first thing I want you to do, and the easiest thing to do, is become aware of your breathing. So if you're just sitting here listening to this now, I want you to take a couple of seconds to just to figure out how you're breathing. And I don't want you to, firstly, before you do it, I don't want you to try change your breathing or anything. I just want you to become aware of it. Are you breathing short? Are you taking nice long breaths? Are you breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth? Are you breathing short, rapid ones? Are you inhaling longer than you're exhaling? Are you exhaling longer than you're inhaling? Okay, these are all just things to take note of. So take a couple of seconds, see how you're breathing there in this moment and what's going on around you. Now, you could be listening to this podcast on the way to work, and it could be a busy day at work, and you know it's going to be a busy day. So you're just, let's say, sitting in the car and you're ready to go. You're kind of, you're pumped up in a way, or you want to turn today because you know you have a lot of stuff to do. Now, if you're sitting in the car and you know you have a lot of stuff to do, a lot of the time your breathing gets shorter because it might not be that you're anxious specifically, but you'll be a bit more alert and you'll be more attentive to what's going on. And that usually increases your breathing rate. So when you increase your breathing rate, what this does is it sends these, I don't want to say stress signals, but it does send warning signals, because that's one physiological way of your body knowing that you're under stress. If you don't see it straight off, is that your breathing increases. Okay, so people, let's say, who are claustrophobic, and they're in a tight space, they're going to breathe really fast and short. So they'll be, and that's sending signals. So it's playing first that they're nervous or they're anxious in that position, and then because of their breathing, they up their breathing, which is going to increase your heart rate, and it's just going to increase your alertness. And then because of that, it's like a vicious cycle. Then you're breathing fast because you're stressed, and then you're stressed because you're breathing fast, and you're blowing off all your CO2. That's why people who are in a serious or who are having a panic attack, the reason that they'll put a bag over their mouth and breathe in and out is to take in more CO2, carbon dioxide, because they're blowing it all off. Okay, and if you blow all of it off, you'll pass out. So breathing fast is a reaction to stress, but it can also cause a stress reaction. So if you look at it, and this is a controversial topic in a way, because what they say is, what we were taught in college was that normal breathing rate is around 12 to 22 breaths per minute. That's what we were told. Now, that's when you look at the Western population. If you look at like an indigenous population, average breathing rate or normal breathing rate is around about 8 breaths per minute, okay, or under 8 breaths per minute. Now, we live in a highly stressed, highly strung society, so that's going to be why the values are skewed, or the scores are skewed, or why respiratory rate seems so much higher than it should be. So really 12 is actually too high, and 12 indicates that you're in generally more towards a parasympathetic state. 22 definitely is a parasympathetic, or is a sympathetic state, I should say, which is that fight or flight. 12 is, let's just put you on a 6, or let's put you on a 6, okay, out of 10 if you're at 12. Now, if you're breathing under 8 breaths per minute, that's actually going to turn that dial down. So it's going to turn it down from a 6 down to maybe a 4, and depends on the specifics of the breath that you're taking, but I'll go through that in more detail. But just that alone will relax the body, okay? So breathing rate, as I said, is going to increase under stress. So even if you're angry, if you think about someone who's angry, think about how fast they're breathing, or someone who's fearful, how fast they're breathing, or even exercise, how fast you're breathing. Now, there's other reasons as well, that's oxygen uptake as well. But if you can reduce your breathing rate, if you can slow it down, you can reduce the stress signals that are being sent to your nervous system and sent to your brain, or your central nervous system, which your brain is included in that. And if you can reduce that down because of the fact that you're breathing normally, even if it is a stressful situation, you're sending those signals to the body to relax itself and to calm down. And it's a way of overriding that stress response. And that's why people who are having panic attacks, you're always asking them to slow down their breath and to really focus on your inhale, focus on your exhale, or focus on your hold. And the reason you're doing that is because you want them to just send relaxation signals to the body. Okay, and you can think about it in someone who's in shock as well. You're going to get them just to focus on their breath, because if you can get them to have long, strung out breaths, they can slow it down. Okay, or they can reduce the amount of threat to the system, and that's what it is. Stress is threat to the system. Okay, a line is a threat to the system. Being late for work is a threat to the system. If you're texting a lot of people, or if you're at the same time and you need to get back to other people, or you're under relationship stress, that is all threats to the system. Presentation, interview is another threat. Okay, so we need to turn that down as much as we can. Now, how can we move from that? How can we actually reduce that stress response? So we know now that if you're breathing really fast, that it's going to be sending these stressful signals. So what can you do to reduce it? And I just gave it away in a way there before this, but there's you can go into the specifics on this a bit more. So if we want to reduce the threat to the system, taking it to under 8 breaths a minute, perfect. That's going to downregulate your sympathetic tone, or put you into more of a parasympathetic tone. If you're over 8 breaths, it's going to upregulate your sympathetic tone. Now, if we look at changing and reducing that in other ways, what other stuff can you do? Well, the very first thing I would say to anyone, and I said it to you there earlier on, is you need to become aware of your breathing rate. And you need to become aware of your breathing rate in different situations. So what's it like when you're sitting in the car? What's it like when you're sitting around, let's say, a table, if it's if you have a meeting at work, or if you have an exam with college? What's your breathing rate like then? Are you sitting there? Are you relaxed? Are you focused? Is it nice and slow, nice and long breaths? Or are you breathing really fast? Okay, so first things first, the only way you're going to be able to change this and change your response to stress, or change the stress response, is by becoming aware of what you are like at different times. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, I want you to think about what your breathing is like at that time. Okay, you don't have to change anything straight away. You just need to think about it and become aware of what you're breathing like. Then when you become aware of it, it's a lot easier to change it. If you're not aware of it, obviously, you're not gonna want to change it. You won't feel that it'll need to be changed, and you'll continue on with, let's say, poor breathing habits, but not poor, more maladaptive breathing habits in different situations. And look at top athletes when they're getting ready to take a free kick, or if they're if it's in crunch time in the game. A lot of the time they're just focusing on slowing their breath down to relax themselves, to put them in a more in a focused state of mind. Now, that's one very easy way of doing it. Okay, you want to really focus first on what it's like before you start changing it, because too many people go to change it before realizing what it's like. You might be doing the right thing, you might just be there might be one part of the breath that's a small bit off, and we'll go through that. Okay, now, looking at some of the research and it's coming out of, let's say, UCLA and Stanford, and an excellent guy to put you onto if you're interested would be Dr. Andrew Huberman from Stanford, or Feldman from UCLA. They go into a lot of detail on breathing and breathing rate and how it affects the body. So one really simple one and one really simple explanation for it is when you inhale, so you're taking an inhale, which is breathing in obviously. When you do that, your heart rate speeds up, okay, depending on how long you're inhaling for. Now, when you exhale, so when you blow out, that's going to actually slow your heart down, okay? So just taking that alone, all right, and this is what plays into heart rate variability as well, which you need, and you need that sympathetic variability as well, which is really important, the sympathetic tone variability. You need to be able to turn it on and off. You don't want to be just turned on all the time, or you don't want to be just turned off all the time either, okay? So being off is as bad as being on all the time. Now, when we look at that, okay, so just if I said that, if I put it back to you, you now know that inhalation is going to speed your heart rate up and an exhalation is going to slow it down. If you find that you're in a position, that you're in a stress position, what do you focus on? Okay, if you're in a position of stress or you're anxious or you're worried, like what do you think you should focus on with that? Okay, and this is something I always do with clients on when we do our calls, is I always talk to them. I'll always pose the question back to them. And a lot of people just, when it's funny, when you're under pressure, you don't want to answer a question because if you get it wrong, like, oh, Jesus. But I don't give a shit if they get it wrong because I'm going to help them out, help them to get the answer anyway, help them to find the answer anyway. So it's not about getting it right or wrong in that situation. But I digress and we go back to what we're talking about. So if an inhalation speeds your heart rate up and an exhalation slows it down, what you need to focus on if you're in a stressful situation is extending the exhale. Okay, so actually making that exhale longer. So that's going to help you relax down. It's going to slow your heart rate down and it's going to send those signals to your brain, to your central nervous system, that things are okay and that you're all right and everything kind of downregulate a small bit. Now, the exact opposite is true as well. If you're in a situation that you want to increase your alertness, you want to get your heart rate up and you're feeling tired and fatigued, then you want to inhale, increase the length of an inhale, okay, with a breath in. And that's going to speed the heart rate up as well. Now, other ways that you can slow it down, and it's a handy way of doing it, would be to actually include a hold. So when you inhale, you hold it for a couple of seconds, and that's going to improve your CO2 tolerance. And I've talked about this in a previous podcast, I think it was number 2 or 3, where I go into a lot more detail on breathing and how it relates to recovery in sports and how it relates to recovery in general. And I talk about CO2 tolerance as well and what CO2 is, and you have a threshold for CO2 basically. So if your threshold is poor, or if the monitor in your body is has a really low threshold and any CO2 builds up, that's going to increase your breathing rate. Okay, but you actually need CO2 in your body, and if your breathing rate increases, that sends those stress signals which may increase your breathing rate as well. So that's another way of looking at it as well. And I won't go into massive detail on that here because that's something that has been, or that I've talked about before. But that was a very brief overview of it. So when we look at that, okay, you're in a stressful situation, extend that exhale. Normal inhale might be 3 seconds, 4 seconds in, and then extend the exhale. So the exhale becomes a 10-second exhale. And if you do that for a couple of minutes, you'll be very surprised how relaxed you'll be. Okay, so that's a really, really simple way of reducing the stress response or counteracting the stress response. And that can be used in sports, it can be used in life or in work, it could just be used before you go to bed as well. If you need to go to bed and you need to relax, you want to go to sleep, then apply that same principle to that exact situation. Your normal inhale, extended exhale. Okay, and use your holds in between as well because the holds do help. Now, on top of that, if you are looking for another simple way or another easy way of reducing the stress response, would be to take a double inhale and then an extended exhale. And this is Andrew Huberman and it's Jack Feynman. It's after coming back to me. This is their work and they talk about this in a lot more detail. And if you can do that, you take that double inhale, extended exhale. Basically what that does is it extracts the maximum amount of CO2 from the blood and it helps to regulate the level of oxygen and CO2 in your blood, but it also opens the alveoli so that you can take in more air, okay, or more oxygen. So it's a good one to do when you are playing sports. If you're running, if you're feeling really tired, it's a great way of, when you take the first one, that gets air in. When you take the second one, that basically slams open the alveoli, fills them up, because a lot of the time when you're fatigued, they actually close off and you're only using, let's say, the upper part of your lungs. And then you take that extended exhale, that puts you into a relaxed state. And again, but you also have taken up a lot of the oxygen that you need. And you need to hold as well to use that oxygen. But as I said, it's a different podcast. Go back to that. If you're interested in this, definitely go back to that. It was episode 2 or episode 3, and I talk about breathing in a lot more detail. And it's a bit longer than this one as well. So that's a really simple one. Now, on top of that, another really simple one, and this is actually from Brian McKenzie, and they have the Shift Adapt program, and they have the HHP Foundation as well. Both of them looking into breathing research, and they go into a lot of detail on it, and they're excellent. Definitely check those guys out. He has this ratio of 1-4-2 split, and he uses this before he goes to bed. And basically what it is 1 is to 4 is to 2. So if your inhale is 5 seconds, that's 1. That means your hold has to be 4 times that. So your hold is then 20 seconds. And then your exhale is 2. It's 2 times 1. So your exhale is 10 seconds. And you can just see it in that alone. That's actually working on those neural circuits that Andrew Huberman talks about as well, in that your inhale is a lot shorter than your exhale. Your exhale is double your inhale, and then the hold is 4 times your inhale. Okay, so if you change that, and if you went to a 2-second, well, I wouldn't say 2-second inhale and a 8-second hold, because it's not going to be as good. You want to increase it, if anything. Okay, so remember that ratio is 1 is to 4 is to 2. So if it's 5 seconds, it's a 20-second hold, and it's a 10-second exhale. Okay, and then you're repeating that. It's not just one time. You have to repeat it for a couple of minutes. So 3 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes is what he does before bed. Excellent ways of down-regulating that nervous system, turning that dial from a 6 or a 7, because if it's on a 7, you'd find it very hard to sleep, and you're just taking it back to maybe a 3, okay, even down to a 2. And then when you get to sleep, then it's obviously going to take down to a 1. So really, really, really simple way to do it. And you can work on that in any situation. It doesn't have to be just before bed. It's going to relax you. It's going to help you calm down. So that's Brian McKenzie. As I said, the other one's Andrew Huberman. Definitely check either of those guys out. They go into a lot more detail on how to do it. But if I was going to do, because I didn't want to drag this podcast on too quick, I just wanted it to be short and snappy and go through all the stuff that I needed to cover. So really quickly, when we look back on it, stress, we need to look at it in terms of it's your nervous system. It's either in a sympathetic or it's in a parasympathetic mode. And if we think of it as a dial for 10 to 1 is sleep, 10 is fight or flight. You see a lion in the wild. And we're trying to just knock that down a couple of notches to help the body recover. Okay, because if it's chronic stressors, just don't work. It's not a good thing. But individual stressors are good, which is exercise. That's why we tell you to exercise. That's why we tell you to hold your breath to improve your tolerance. Individual stressors are excellent. That's why you fast as well. That's why we fast on like go for a fasting diet. It's an individual stressor, but massive benefit. Starvation is a different thing. Long couple of weeks without food is a different gravy altogether. But single day fasts, couple of day fasts are actually extremely good for your body. But I'm not going to go into detail on that because that's not something that I do. In general, single stressors that are followed by enough recovery time improve your overall performance in your life and your health in a general sense. But in a general sense, don't be silly either though. And then how breathing relates to stress. You're looking for bring it under 8 breaths per minute to down-regulate that sympathetic tone. And then if you find, I just say be aware of your breathing in different situations. See what it's like. Are you breathing short and fast? Are you actually breathing nice and slow and relaxed? Do you find yourself holding your breath throughout the day? Just become more aware of it at different times. I said a few minutes ago, see what it's like. I want you to check again right now and see what it's like again. Just become aware of it. Don't change anything. Just become aware. And then you can start to change it then once you're aware of what it's like, because you'll have a better understanding of what you're like in other situations. and what causes you to get like that. So how can we change it? Obviously, be aware, work on increasing the exhale if you want to relax, increasing your inhalation if you want to upregulate or getting or improve your alertness or increase your heart rate. So it could be used for in the gym. Could be a good way of doing it, as well as increasing your inhalation time to increase your heart rate before you go into a couple of exercises, or it could be the same in sport. And then include holds as well when you're trying to relax yourself, because holds are excellent, but they're also good in sport because they improve oxygen transfer, and that's just you're holding at either end of the inhale and the exhale. And then I talked about Andrew Huberman and I talked about Brian McKenzie. Andrew Huberman uses that double inhale, extended exhale. So, and it's called a physiological sigh, and it helps to relax the body down. And then Brian McKenzie uses that 1:4:2 split, and basically that's you inhale for 5 seconds, hold for 20 seconds, exhale for 10 seconds, and you're repeating for 5 to 10 minutes. So guys, that is everything I wanted to talk about today. And on top of that, I hope you took something from this. But I was going to say as well that I am taking on a lot more clients one-to-one, but I'm also taking people on for one-off consultations, so injury rehab or physio consultations. And I'll do those usually on a Monday or a Thursday. So it'll be a consultation. We'll go through a Zoom call. We'll go through everything, your history, your beliefs and attitudes. We'll also talk about why kicks up, what your lifestyle factors are that may be affecting it. And then on top of that, I'll give you exercises and I'll give you different things to adjust it. But I like to take a holistic approach. I'm not going to go on a Zoom call and tell you that you have to go foam rolling for 10 minutes a day, because that's going to help it, because that's not a holistic approach at all. That's just a very narrow approach. So, and I'm also, because it's a Zoom call, you're not getting massage. Okay, I don't believe in massage a lot of the time for injury rehab, because it works, but it's a short term. Okay, so I'm looking for long-term change with injury. So if you have an injury that's gone on a long time, definitely get in contact with me. We can talk about it a small bit more through Instagram, through LinkedIn. Send me an email at mobilitytutor@gmail.com. And if it's the right fit, then we'll set up a consultation that will go through it in a lot more detail. Okay, so if you're interested in that, guys, if you think that's something that you want, if you want to learn more about it, what could be causing it, and then what to do about it, definitely get in contact with me, and we can organize that. Other than that, thanks a million for listening this week. I hope you took something from that podcast. Hopefully you've a couple of takeaways there in terms of what you can do to reduce stress, and what you can do to actually increase your heart rate as well, which is something that I wasn't going to go into as much detail on, but sure, it's there now, so may as well leave it there. And if you have found this helpful, I've had a few people writing to me on Instagram. That's excellent. I love when I get a bit of feedback on it, what you found helpful, even if you have any questions. And there's a lot of people sending me questions on Instagram now about different podcasts, and it doesn't matter if it's 10 podcasts ago or 15 ago, you can still get in contact with me, and I'll do my best to answer that question for you. If you found this helpful, I would really, really love if you could send it to a friend, because that's what gets the name out there. That's what improves it. I know exactly then when you send it to a friend, if you get in contact with me as well, I know what you're looking for, and I have a better idea of which podcasts are doing well and which ones people are looking for more, let's say, and which ones people aren't as interested in, obviously because of the views and the downloads. And then lastly, guys, if you're on iTunes or Spotify, I would love if you could rate it. iTunes is the only one you can rate it on, but if you could rate it or even pop it up on your story on Instagram, all these things go a long way. Very last one I have to ask for now is if you could subscribe as well, as you'll get when they come out every week. So that's everything from me today, guys. Thanks a million for listening again, and I will hope to see you all again soon, or chat to you all again soon. Have a good one.